On today's episode, we are going to tackle one of the potential candidates for greatest World Series of all times. That would be the 1991 World Series, which went 7 games against the Minnesota Twins and the Atlanta Braves. Well, I can't do that by myself, so we had to bring back a baseball aficionado and my good friend Jordan Dove, who's joining us today. He was on episode 11 when he discussed the World War II Cardinals and his grandfather, Augie Bergamo. Jordan, thanks for coming back.
There you go. Excited to do this one.
Well, don't worry if you don't see Brooke, folks. I know you all love Brooke. She is here. We went to an LSU game today. There's her hand. We both got a little too much sun, and she felt that she wasn't camera ready. But she will be communicating with some coaches' signs here to, make sure that I, don't steal inappropriately. But Jordan, because you're live in the studio, in addition to putting up all our live guests at the Radisson, we also have some potential gifts. So Jordan, you can choose between the classic Cracker Jack or Big League Chew.
Ooh.
Do you have a choice?
Let's say the Cracker Jacks, because they're in the 7th inning stretch song.
The Cracker Jack. Very good. I have my peanuts, but those are already open and contaminated, so I'm not going to offer Jordan that. I'll keep the Big League Chew, which, maybe one day I'll eat in front of you. It's not that appealing, and it might cause me to talk like this. But it's, hey, baseball, right? Hello, and welcome to Fungos and Fastballs, the podcast of baseball history and trivia. I'm your host, Jerry Dines. Let's jump into today's episode. So, Jordan, with this great series, 1991, I'm not going to tell the differences in our age, but I am pretty sure you weren't quite born yet back in 1991. And yet, when I first, texted you and about ideas for an episode, and this came up, you were very excited. You said, "Oh my gosh, I love that series." You're sending me videos. So what intrigues you about this about this World Series?
Yeah, so I was -8 in 1991. I was born in 99, so I would have been -8. But what can I say? Always have since I was a kid. I love sports history, and I love good baseball. And this is a series that had good baseball from start to finish. But to answer your question better, I think it started with me. I'm just such a sports nerd. When I was younger, I would research and look at rankings of what were the best playoff series ever played? More specifically, what were some of the best World Series ever played? And when you read, those consistent years come up, like 1991, you start to look more into, why was it? And you look at the games and you look at, the circumstances around it. And yeah, 91's a classic. 91 has everything a baseball fan would want. 2 underdogs, really, who were not great the year before and came out of nowhere that year. You have great plays, memorable plays. Kirby Puckett made a few, and you have silly things like the Hrbek Gant, tie up at first, and then you have just close games. When you get 2 teams going for the championship, you want close games because these are the best that each league has to offer. And 5 of the 7 were 1-run games, and you have a couple extra inning games
3
and
extra
walk-offs,
including the last 2.
Yeah, it's like Jack Buck is calling the whole thing.
Jack Buck and Tim McCarver.
Yes. All the Cardinals roots there, isn't it great? What in the series, or what is there not? What in the series does it not have? Everything you want, it has, and it's just always stuck in my mind, as I'm sure it has stuck with every baseball fan who's watched it.
It's in the list, definitely, of greatest World Series. We're about to do an episode on Bill Mazeroski, probably our next episode, actually. And that's 1960, also 7 games. And of course, you and I have spoken, and maybe we'll have Jordan back to do this one. Not a favorite World Series of mine, but the 2001 Yankees Diamondbacks series. So that would be a good one to do. But no, fantastic. And you mentioned the season before. And so let's go into the background between these 2 teams, because I think when everybody thinks the 90s and the Braves, they think the quote team of the 90s, or certainly debated as you and I were speaking with the Yankees, but certainly just killer pitching. They were not that way in the 80s. I mean, the Braves were horrible during the 80s. And the Twins had a World Series just 3 years before.
Against the Cardinals, yes.
The Cardinals. No, but that had been their only series since 1924, when they were not the Minnesota Twins, they were the Washington Senators. So, and you were talking about the teams not doing great the year before.
That's correct. Yeah, 1990 Minnesota, 74-88, last in the American League West. The Atlanta Braves 65-97, also last in their division, and for them, really a culmination of that whole entire decade of the 80s. Unfortunately for poor Dale Murphy, someone who's one of the greatest Braves ever, just not a lot of success. Minnesota had kind of fallen away after their 87 run. I believe they actually do better in 88, but it wasn't enough to make the playoffs that year. And then 89 and 90, they completely fall apart and become very forgettable, I think, in a lot of baseball fans' eyes. Now, this turnaround, if you want to talk about it now, it came as a surprise, I think, to many, but it really is not a surprise when you look at it in the lens of like the off-season acquisitions each made. Minnesota, I mean, Chuck Knoblauch, who was also a great Yankee, Rookie of the Year in 1991. You acquire Jack Morris, someone who had been with Detroit and who had championship experience being on that 84 team. Atlanta, I think it starts with Bobby Cox. Bobby Cox was someone who was brought back because he had managed them before, brought back in 1990 and had finished the season. But in 91, it was his first time, taking over for an entire season. And so you have that. And then, of course, they get Terry Pendleton from St. Louis, who turns into a MVP caliber player. And then you have, for both teams, I should say, this really big pitching turnaround. You have guys like Tom Glavine, who's obviously a Hall of Fame pitcher, who had really struggled up to that point, but had finally really turned it around, good enough to obviously win Cy Young for that year. And guys like Steve Avery, who had his best year up until that point. For Minnesota, we talked
before you get to Minnesota, you're right. I mean, you had Avery and Glavine. You also had John Smoltz.
Right.
Now, folks, of course, we always think Greg Maddux of the Braves of the 90s. This was a couple of years before Maddux joined. He was still a Chicago Cub before. So, but you still had part of that core three of Glavine and Smoltz. Avery's often forgotten. He's not mentioned among those pitchers, but should be. He was a pivotal part of the early Braves things. And I also want to comment on Jack Morris, because he said, you're right. I mean, he was an old man, really. He had come into the league since 1977. So, 14 years in baseball is a long time. Played with the Tigers that whole time. And the Twins just, they captured lightning in a bottle. They grabbed him just for 1 year. 1 year, he got a nice contract, 1 year, and boy, did he perform, as we'll talk about later. So
he did. And
so you were about to jump into
that was another similar to Atlanta, where the pitching really started to come together, not only because they acquired Jack Morris, who adds everything he has to offer and experience, but Kevin Tapani had, if we look back at his career, the best season of his career. I think he led all starters that year with, or at least on Minnesota, with ERA. And then Scott Erickson, who finished second in Cy Young voting, only behind Roger Clemens. So both teams very similar. Were just putting it together. The pitching was starting to get on track, and just incredible turnarounds. Twins 74-88 to 95-67, and Atlanta 65-97 to 94-68. Both good enough for first place in their divisions.
There had never been, and we're talking, over 100 years of Major League Baseball, there had not been a last to first, a worst to first. And now you had two of them. You had two of them in the same year. So
both set to make history.
Who predicted
it's
that?
like whoever was going to win was going to be the first to go from last in their division to winning the whole thing. So just incredible.
And I want to get into, before we get into the game, one more little trivia alert. This series, because it had 3 extra inning games, 69 total innings. Can't speak today. I think it might be the imbibement. 69 total. We got to do this sober next, bro. I know I am sober. We got to do this dry. How's that? 69 total innings, which is incredible. It shared the record of longest 7-game series in the number of innings. That was broken last year in the Dodgers-Blue Jays series. So now I will say, baseball wonks, trivia nerds, the 1912 Red Sox-Giants series actually lasted 75 innings. But I found this interesting. It was actually an 8-game series. There was actually a tie game called because of darkness.
How about that?
So that is technically the longest in series. So we're getting off base. We got to get back on base. Brooke is signaling me. He's doing the earful. Carol Burnett stealing sign. Get back on base. So let's get to the series. And I do want to the opening pitch of the World Series. They always choose interesting people or exciting people or sometimes poignant people. That year it was an umpire who threw the opening pitch, Steve Palermo. Steve Palermo, just a few months earlier, had actually been injured. He had intervened in a mugging outside a restaurant. 2 waitresses were being mugged, and he actually intervened and was shot. Not to bring it down on the podcast. And they actually didn't think he would walk again, spinal cord injury. And he actually was able to rehab back with a crutch, but he actually went out on the mound for that first pitch. So just poignant, really a beautiful moment. And all the umpires are around there hugging him and giving him kisses before game 1. So what a way to start a historic series in my mind. I found it very, very interesting, very poignant. But we get to game 1, and you mentioned Jack Morris. Because of a long Pittsburgh series, and Jordan mentioned, that the Braves had taken on in the playoffs against the Pirates. It was actually a long series. The Braves, by the way, were at that point in the National League West.
Very odd.
Yes. Remember Atlanta is in the West. If you have it's a damn Mercator projection.
Very odd.
They are no longer in the West. Although who knows after Manfred re-engineers the whole league. Hopefully that won't happen. But we do. We have Jack Morris, the classic, and he's going on for the Braves, Charlie Leibrandt, who, again, may be one of the reasons, although Leibrandt was no slouch, because they had used a lot of their pitching in that long Pirates series there. So yeah. So let's start. 5-2 win for Minnesota. Yeah.
One of the few, one of
two.
The
Metrodome, the Metrodome.
In the old, that's right, which has been called one of the ugliest ballparks. And I mean, it was also a football stadium for the Vikings, but great memories there for Minnesota fans. But
either stadium is still there.
That's right.
Atlanta Fulton County Stadium is no longer there either. That's right. That's where game 3, 4, and 5 would be.
That's right. But 5-2 Minnesota win. One of 2 games in the series that doesn't end in a 1-run game. Morris goes 7 innings. It'd be a preview of what he'd do for the rest of the series, and pitches extremely well. And I found this stat too. Chuck Knoblauch, first World Series game of his career, and of course he played many, 3 for 3 and an RBI. Brought in the first run of the World Series. Yeah,
he had a great game actually. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as you mentioned, Rookie of the Year.
Yes. One of the big acquisitions for Minnesota and helped turn it around for them.
Yeah, the Braves could never get back. I think one of my and because of that, Leibrandt would not get another start, even though he was chosen as the first game starter. Mm-hmm. He did come in later in relief.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the game 6. So we'll talk about that.
One of my favorite is when Dan Glavine, the Twins, runs over Greg Olson, the Braves catcher, coming home. And there were a couple of those in this game that were just great, with the running into the catcher and will the catcher hold the ball. We don't have that anymore, thanks to the Buster Posey rule. But back in the day, you could just barrel into the catcher and hope he dropped the ball. Mm-hmm. And Greg Olson just flips over and keeps the ball.
But, like a true catcher.
Like a true catcher. It didn't help the Braves that much. You mentioned the Twins won 5-2.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right.
So, you want to move to game 2?
Let's do it. Okay. Let's do it. Interesting pitching matchup in game 2. You got Tapani versus Glavine?
Yes.
So, Tapani, who had who had been playing his best season of his career. And then Tom Glavine, who's the NL Cy Young winner that year. They have their own, we always talk about and we'll talk about the game 7, but they have their own pitchers duel through 8. And we're just going back and forth, but obviously this is, do you want to do the Hrbek thing now? do we want to do this now? Just,
some good homers, right? Chili Davis, I think, gives the Twins an early lead. One thing I do want to bring up, the beginnings of game 2 and 3 had almost identical poor fielding play with outfielders, David Justice. I think in game 2 is Mark Lemke, game 3, Ron Gant. And they both move towards the ball and it goes between them. Mm-hmm. And they both make the same fielding. I mean, again, Justice is the common link in both of those. I'm not saying it's his fault necessarily, but they both make these. I mean, it was really a series of these moments and these plays, which had they gone differently, you just had the sense that the series would have gone differently. And in 2 games, game 2 and 3, both made fielding errors that put a Twin on base and would have, really, led to some run, or led to a run there, eventually. So, but just like my talking about the flip in game 1, game 2, really one of the best plays is the Kent Hrbek first base play. Go into it because you love it too.
It's so hilarious looking back. It's like you watch that thing and every time you're like, surely they're going to overturn that.
I don't know if Brooke can put it in the video on Instagram, and if she does, you got to see it.
At least a photo. I mean, because you could just see a photo of that, but you watch that every time, and you're like, surely they're going to overturn that, right? And they don't. It's just the end of the frame.
Tell what happened.
So, Ron Gant, I guess he overruns, right? And then he's making his way to second.
I think into left.
And who's throwing it back? It wasn't Kirby, right? Who was it that throws it back? I don't remember. But Minnesota makes a play in the outfield, and Ron Gant over. So they make a throw.
He overruns, right? Comes back into the infield, and you're right. I think
and Atlanta's down to their last out for the inning, and they throw it back to the great Ken Hrbek.
Maybe they can get him at first.
Yes,
Gant at first, and Gant tries to get back. It goes to Hrbek. Gant gets back.
Definitely gets back there.
Their legs get tangled, and Hrbek literally lifts Gant off the base.
Yeah, shows the umpire that I have the ball, he's out, and the umpire totally goes for it and calls him out. And
he is called out, even though he had clearly gotten on base. He was lifted on base. And you're right. It's an unbelievable play.
The best part of it is the third out. Like, it's what ends the innings.
Replay back then. I don't know if you could. You should have been able. Yeah, you would replay that today, obviously.
Yes.
But it gets the out. And so monumental is that play that, of course, they had a bobblehead made of it. I was looking on eBay. Brooke is. Yeah.
No.
Back, it goes on the shelf. Right?
I want one too.
There are the expensive ones, but you can get ones for reasonably priced. I'm debating which bobblehead to get next. So.
I've just never seen a play like it ever. I've never, and I'm surprised that more infielders haven't tried it to see if they can get away with it too. But it's the biggest stage, and the great Ken Hrbek, he lifts Ron Gant out, and it makes the difference. And Minnesota escapes the inning. But I just had to talk about that. But if
the game goes and it's 2-2, through much of the game after that early Twins lead, the Braves come back.
Tapani versus Glavine. They're going at it.
And a great pitching duel. And then Scott Leyes.
Yes.
I always remember like Dr. Zayas in Planet of the Apes. Scott Leyes.
A rookie.
Yeah. Homers in the 8th. Mm-hmm. And that turns out to be the game-winning home run.
Yes.
They never come back.
And and I was looking up his stats. He had only homered. I don't even think he had homered 5 times all season. And so, had really come up big as a rookie. Chuck Knoblauch, not the only rookie, coming up big for Minnesota in that series.
A solid game too. And then you get to game 3, which
shifting to Atlanta,
potentially the greatest series. Game 3 is often up there with potentially the greatest game, primarily because it went 12 innings, and it was a close one. The Braves eke it out 5-4. Again, you're going back to Atlanta there after the first 2 games. The Twins are up 2-0. You can't go down 3 games.
No.
almost never happens. A comeback from 3 games.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah.
But the stats are certainly not in your favor. They knew they had to win. They were back home. They were excited. And so get to game 3.
First World Series ever played in Atlanta.
In Atlanta.
Atlanta
Yeah, there
is
had been
up.
Milwaukee, the Milwaukee
Yes,
Braves
correct.
had, but
correct.
never in Atlanta.
Correct. Atlanta's up in this game like 4-1 after 6 innings, and Minnesota claws back. The great Kirby Puckett home run solo shot in the 7th makes it 4-2, and then Chili Davis in the very next inning has a 2-run homer to tie it, and so it remains 4-4 until the 12th inning. And you're wondering, is Atlanta going to blow another game, go down 3-0, and Mark Lemke comes up and walks it off in 12. And yeah, honestly, like we'll talk about games 6 and 7, but this is easily one of the 3 best games I'd say that was played in the series.
Yeah,
because there was a lot of drama as it goes on. The longest game played in
the length of it, again, you do not have like nowadays the ghost runner, the Manfred man that comes on, at second with extra innings. I mean, so 12 innings is quite the game for a World Series game. And really Tom Kelly, the Twins manager, he had exhausted his pitch.
I was just about to say that. Yep.
Yeah. So, but, and the homers in this game comes from, if you were around 90s baseball, and even, you just heard, Puckett and David Justice and Lonnie Smith, these names, not so much Lemke, but these are names that kind of radiate throughout 90s baseball.
Yes. Yeah.
And so do you get any game 4?
Game 4. Still in Atlanta, another 1-run game. Atlanta takes this one 3-2, and you get the Game 7 preview.
Yes.
You get Morris versus Smoltz.
Morris in his second of 3 games. The old man Morris.
Yes.
Against Smoltz, who, as you're projecting out there, they will be the Game 7 match.
Yeah, and John Smoltz, I don't even know how old he was at this point, but this is early on in his career.
Yeah, I think he's like 24.
Yeah,
and
first ever World Series game.
Smoltz, as a young guy, he grew up in Michigan. So he was a Tigers fan. Jack Morris was his idol. That is said, he's admitted that throughout. So this was kind of a dream. But man, you're pitching opposite the guy you watched when you were a quote kid.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, Morris has another good outing, gives up 1 run, and then is replaced by Carl Willis, and that's when Lonnie Smith ties the game at 2 in the 7th inning. Smoltz, I don't recall when he was taken out, but he went a pretty good ways too. So it really was the preview of these two, going back and forth, and there was more drama, obviously, that had been extended from the night before. And then
and it ends in a very close tag. Again, Mark Lemke slides around the Brian Harper tag. So again, a game of moments, really.
Right. And you always have it seems like in every World Series you have some obscure player, and in this case it was Jerry Willard who had the sacrifice fly, and Mark Lemke, once again, as he was involved the night before, he's involved in the last play in some way. He had the walk off the night before, then he scores the winning run in this game, and I got a kick out of seeing Brian Harper just so livid. Throwing his mask on the ground, yelling at the umpire. You watch it in real time, it looks like Harper tagged him, but you watch it again, and he had just missed him. He was just delayed on him, and it was a great run in by Lemke there. So you have Atlanta now. They went back home. The Braves went back to Atlanta down 2-0. And in 2 straight games have walk-offs to tie the series. So it's amazing how series can shift just like that,
And then you get to Game 5, which was the only blowout of the series.
That's right.
Really.
And it was close after 6.
Yeah, it really was. There was the first 3 innings were scoreless. And even in the 7th, the Braves are up 3-2. But, you had Tom Glavine and again, Kevin Tapani, and both of them kind of decompensated. Glavine lasted longer, but then in the 6th, he started to falter. And eventually you had the Braves winning 14-5. It was just a slew of runs that happened. In the 7th, the Braves scored 6 runs. And Lonnie Smith hit his 3rd home run in 3 nights. So
17 total hits for Atlanta in that game too.
Yeah. And so now you have Atlanta up 3-2. what happened, but you're back to Minnesota. You're back to the Metrodome and another extra inning game in game 6, 11 innings. You've got Steve Avery for the Braves, 3 days rest, and the Twins, Scott Erickson.
Yeah.
So.
And you got to feel confident if you're Minnesota having Scott Erickson. He was the 20-game winner that year for him. I talked earlier how he was second in Cy Young voting. But you're also really confident if you're Atlanta because you had just won with the walk-offs in games 3 and 4 and then just dominated game 5. It's like, okay, we got off to a rough start. Going to close it out here. But this is the Kirby Puckett game.
Puckett game. And is it the 7th inning stretch? Can I have my peanuts?
Yeah.
Jordan
yes,
has his Cracker Jack. He may choose to eat.
Are they too loud? Is this bag too loud?
They probably are. Some Cracker Jack.
That's right.
Yeah, open them, sure.
I think I will.
We're down to game 6.
I'll have a few. I think I'll have a few here.
Take the rest home unless you can down the whole bag.
That's right.
No, these are good. I'm going to spoil my dinner.
There we go.
So you mentioned the Kirby Puckett game, as you like to say.
Kirby Puckett game, and he had struggled a little bit going into that game, but in this game, 3 for 4, 3 RBIs. There was a triple he had in the first that scored the first run of the game. Defensively, my goodness, I'm trying to go in order here. 3rd inning, Minnesota's up 2-0. Makes one of the all-time best World Series catches in history. I mean, we can all see the image of him running out to, I guess it was like right in center field and catching the ball right at the plexiglass and just firing that thing back to first base. So I mean, he was coming up huge offensively and defensively in that game. So he was just incredible. Obviously in the 5th, Pendleton showed why he was the MVP that year. 2-run shot to tie the game in the 5th. But then Kirby, once again, answers in the bottom frame, has a sac fly to push the lead to 3-2. Ron Gant ties the game at 3 in the 7th, and that's where the game remains until the 11th. Do we want to talk about Lee Brandt?
The
decision.
We talked about Charlie Lee Brandt in game 1. He did not have a great outing, although he had World Series experience, whereas a lot of the Atlanta folks did not. But Bobby Cox decides to bring him out as a reliever.
And there's a lot of debate about, it's easy to read into it now knowing what happened. But if you look back at what Lee Brandt had done to the 3 scheduled batters for that inning, he had done very well against those 3 in game 1. In game 1, the 3 that came up that were supposed to come up for the 11th were Kirby Puckett, Chili Davis, and Shane Mack, and they had gone 0 for 6 against him in game 1. So if you look at it in that sense, the decision made sense, but you also had Mike Stanton and Alejandro Pena, who hadn't allowed anything in the last few innings, but he wanted to roll with them, and we know what happened next. The Jack Buck call, and Kirby Puckett comes up. It was, and Kirby Puckett completed.
So he's going to bunt. Kirby Puckett plan was to bunt and get on base.
Yes.
And Chili Davis, who I think you said is on deck, said, I love this quote, "Bunt my ass, hit it out, and let's go home." And so Kirby Puckett often takes the early pitch. He waited for his pitch, and boy did he! And as you said, walk off home run, and you get Jack Buck. We'll see you tomorrow night. That's right.
The all-time famous.
And Jack Buck just understated, and we'll see you tomorrow night.
Right, just one of the most iconic calls and plays in World Series history.
Kirby's running about the bases and his arms raised, and that is the pose that if you go to Target Field in Minnesota to see a Twins game, you will see his statue. I have not been to Target yet. I think Jordan and I are both kind of have a goal of going to all the stadiums. I'm about halfway done. But have you been to Target?
I haven't. No, I haven't.
Yeah. It's Minnesota's we've got to get up there. Brooke, let's get up there.
Can I come?
Sure. Come on. Brooke doesn't have a mic. She's like, no. We don't have the money to fly to Minnesota. But that is what you'll see, that statue. So it takes us to that last night, Game 7, classic series in the Metrodome. And as we mentioned before, in Game 4, you've got a rematch now of Jack Morris and John Smoltz. And I think I've mentioned before, I'm not a tremendous Smoltz fan, not for his pitching, but he tends to be negative on the Yankees in commentating. I think because he's bitter about the 90s and the Yankees.
They did beat him twice.
Yeah. But I have to say, even non-biased about Smoltz, Morris had the better mustache. We're all about mustaches.
I'll agree with that.
We are all about mustaches on Fungus and Fastball. Brooke wants to do a mustache episode, and Morris is, Morris's goes deeper. Not the brush under. So that's right. So Morris at least won in the mustache competition. How are you doing in the game, Jordan?
Both did extremely well. I'll say, but
fantastic.
This was the Jack Morris game.
Yeah.
10 innings pitched. He pitches the whole game. It does go an extra inning. We'll get there. 10 innings pitched, 8 strikeouts, no runs allowed, and is one of the clutchest pitching performances of all time, and sticks with everyone's brains even to this day.
If you watch baseball, as many people later in the 90s did, for home runs, this is not your game.
No, this is
scoreless. This is a bottom of the 10.
This is a nothing game.
0-0.
This is a nothing game until the very last pitch. The ultimate pitcher's duel. Everything's on the line. Game 7, and it's just the perfect way to end this already great World Series that you had gotten through 6 games. You have several great defensive plays that happen as well. The one I always like, the first thing I told you was, I love the Hrbek Harper 3-2-3 because that's a rare double play, but it's one of the few times in that game where Morris is in trouble. There's an Atlanta runner on third base. It looks like he might. In fact, the bases might have been loaded. I have to check on that again. But there was either way. There was for sure an Atlanta runner on third, and they had only gotten 1 out, and you get this 3-2-3 double play.
Yeah, infield hit.
Yeah.
Right. And 3-2-3 if you know your scoring.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry.
3 is the first baseman. 2 is the catcher. So it goes first base, catcher, back to first base.
And that was a little bit near the end of the game, so that could have been trouble for Minnesota. But yeah, Morris just kept getting out of it, kept staying in there. They take Smoltz out around the 7th. Is it the 8th inning? Okay, the 8th inning.
Bottom of the 8th.
Right, but he goes. So, but I mean, credit to him. I mean, he went quite a ways too.
And I think everyone is surprised when Morris comes out in the 9th and the 10th. I mean, again, well into his 30s there.
Right.
And pitches a 1-2-3 inning.
That's right. That's right. Stays on fire throughout, but is the ultimate pitcher's duel, and then it sets up the 10th inning, and we have another underdog in Gene Larkin, right? Who hits the walk off, little blooper out there in left field, and gives Minnesota their 2nd title in 5 years. And man, it is just perfect. It's a perfect game. I know every baseball fan wouldn't say it. They want to see the home runs and they want to see a lot of runs. But for someone like me who likes a pitcher's duel, it's just the perfect game. It goes.
It's tough to go through series on a podcast because people are like, "Gosh, I don't remember them," and you're going through game to game. But the great thing is, it's the 90s, so all the games are on YouTube now. You can go watch all these highlights and even the full games themselves. And Game 7, if you love pitching. And especially now, again, you've got both of them, Smoltz and Jack Morris, in the Hall of Fame,
right?
For a reason. Although Jack Morris waited a long time. We've critiqued the Hall of Fame and their delays.
Yes, me too.
Iconic Tigers pitcher. And again, just 1 year for the Twins. So fantastic. And it really is. And it's in the running. Many people feel it's the greatest series of all time. We're going to cover other series too. So you can make your judgment if you keep listening. Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you
for coming here today. Thanks always to Brooke for his her pants. Good enough. And this wraps up today's episode. As always, we do a shout out, and I'm going to let Jordan shout out. Jordan, who can you assure me that you're going to tell about that's going to listen?
My brother, Austin Dove, the real baseball player in the family. all the way up in Louisville, Kentucky.
All right, I'm going to be looking.
Love you, big bro.
Yeah, I can tell the cities of the listeners. I'm going to be looking for that Louisville episode. We're always happy you're listening, and I hope you keep listening. Don't forget to subscribe on your podcast platform. Watch us on video on Spotify or YouTube. And heading back to the locker room, this is Jerry Dines and Fungos and Fastballs.